Chill as Fuck podcast, episode 1.
We in here, Robbie Rob and Trissy Triss.
Oh, man. Episode 1, yo. What are we doing? What are we doing today?
Tristan, tell us how the show flows. What happens?
All right, so how we plan on making this work, we kind of want it to flow like a therapy session, but it ain't necessarily a therapy session, so it'll be a little bit more lax, but we'll start off with check-in. We're going to be introducing our drink, which we'll get to and y'all understand a little bit better. We'll be diving into our topic. From there, we'll try to drop some gems and then shout out another therapist out here doing this good work who we think is worth acknowledging. And yeah, and we're gonna go from there. So let's jump into this drink. What's in your mug? What you got in your mug?
Tristan got this wife. She a bartender, your favorite bartender, at your favorite bartender, and she's serving up the margaritas today. This shit is fire. Mm-hmm. It's like, it tastes like juicy juice, like real juice.
Telling y'all, this woman be in the kitchen whipping up some creation, so hire her for all your bartending needs.
With a little bit of cazadores.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
So that's what we drinking, and just so you all know, we drink to feel even better, never to drink better. That's the rule for anything that we do. We don't want to cover up feelings, but if they're good, we want to take them to the next level, and that's what we're doing today. Because we're out here in a very big way, and this is celebration.
Hey.
Cheers! Healing chill as fuck. Wait, Rob, I didn't get you right.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. All right, so y'all, let's check in. It's been an interesting time to be alive. I know that the height of all of the feelings are not where they were at one point. I think we're kind of coming down a little bit, which is good, but we want to keep it up high enough so we keep the movement moving. But how have you guys been feeling? Tell me what it's been like this past few weeks for you.
I think that it's still an emotional roller coaster, you know, as we get more used to this new normal, and getting comfortable, and then also checking yourself when you feel like you're getting too comfortable. Every time
don't get too comfy. We still gotta fuck some shit up.
Right. So it's like, oh, my timeline's going back to normal. How can I shake it up a little bit with some, you know, some blackity black.
Right. So that's another thing that's important. We are blackity black as fuck black.
We're black.
So
I'm Mexican and black, and I'm black.
Yeah. For me, I say that these past few weeks, like Rob said, they've been interesting. I think that it's definitely been a mix of highs and lows and trying to find that balance. I think we have the pandemic on one hand, and then in the same breath, we have a fucking pandemic called racism, which is what this country is birthed on. So I think these two pandemics at once, being very front and center, trying to navigate it all, not just personally, but considering the work we do professionally and just trying to stay afloat. But I think when you take a few minutes to tap out of that, I'd honestly say like life is good. I got tons of shit to be grateful for. And that balance of tapping into that gratitude while also making room for the tough shit going on.
Yeah,
how about you, so?
I am feeling good. I had a rough month last month, and I'm feeling good. I have a few clients who are active in this movement, and I feel like now what my efforts are geared toward is supporting those who are in the front lines. And I'm finding like a lot of reward in that. I'm enjoying it. And as well, like I just did the stats for Circle Rate Therapy, and our business has tripled in the past year, and that feels beautiful. When I broke down the demographics, I saw that 77% of our clients are Black, 16% are LGBTQ, and we are overrepresented in terms of those in the marginalized communities, and that's a motherfucking dream to be able to serve people who really need it. So I feel great. I feel empowered. I'm trying not to be tired, and I'm feeling pretty balanced.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about those statistics you just dropped from the work we're doing, and it speaks exactly to what we want this podcast to serve as that bridge between our folks in therapy and just rebranding therapy, changing the face of therapy and making it something that, you know, folks who look like us can relate to. So those statistics got me over here feeling good because the numbers are showing that we doing what the fuck we set out to do.
Numbers don't lie, Negroes. The numbers don't lie.
And it's important to note that mental health and therapy is not a wave. I know a lot of people feel like people are just hopping on the wave of like it's cool to be on a journey or to gain insight into yourself, but we are not away. We are here.
No, this
for
is
the
like
long
forever.
haul, and it's so important in so many aspects of our lives. I think even today, we're gonna jump into how that plays into relationships. Yeah. And I'm sure we're seeing a lot of interesting things related to relationships.
We sure is.
I know
what that looks like.
Timelines.
Yeah. So how it first happened was, I heard there was an interview with August Alsina about his relationship with Jada. And I've been very interested in the Smiths' relationship because I think they have a lot to offer. I think they have a new way to think about relationships, and I've wanted them to share more. So I was glad to hear from him. And then I listened to the interview, and I don't follow August Alsina. I don't know much about him. But listening, I was just like, well, this is an impressive 27-year-old man, is how I felt. But then I feel like the ball really, people started talking after August's interview. And now people are talking more because Will and Jada went live.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, for me, what I want everyone to know is that there are no rules to life. How you live your life has to be in accordance with what feels right and true for you, and that might change. And no one can define that for you. It's up to you to figure out what works. So there are no rules. We will never sway you and tell you this is right and this is wrong, or that is wrong and this is right. You get to figure out. We want you to think critically about the choices you make and know what you're getting involved in, and do it eyes wide open and do it for yourself, not for acceptance or to appease society's norms.
Yeah, definitely. And as the show goes on, we're going to just dive into unconventional relationships in general. But one of the takeaways that I thought were worth mentioning from this whole dynamic is some of the pushback I initially was hearing about August Alsina. And, was this his role, and should he have been saying something? And I think in that breadth of unconventional relationships, and if you're going to step out and explore whatever type of relationship it is you want to explore, you also have to be willing to acknowledge that everyone's story is their own. So everyone you include in your shit, speaking from like that married angle of Will and Jada, and not that they particularly try to do this, but just hearing people's feedback, like that wasn't necessarily his place, etc. Anyone you choose to get an entanglement with, it now is their story, and they have permission to share whatever in the fuck they want about their life and their story. So I'd say, hey, if you're going to ride that ride, you got to be willing to just go for it and just say, balls to the walls, like I'm just doing it.
I'm
because
accepting risk.
You can't be like, I'm going to live outside of this box, but I'm going to put you in this box. You got to accept it all.
That's a good point. I like that.
Relationships are like headphones. Every time you think that they're all straight, and then you put them in your pocket and you pull them back out and they're all tied up and knotted.
That's a gem drop.
Like there is no right or wrong, or there is no like format that's going to keep y'all straight. Those entanglements are going to come in so many different forms, not just people outside of relationships or things. There's always going to be something that you are going to have to evolve with, because the only thing consistent in life is change.
It's change. I love that. And I think that when I think of open relationships, and let's just jump into it, right? When I think of unconventional, I think open. And maybe that's just where my mind goes. But when I think of open, I think that people have they think that open means you can sleep with whoever. And I like to think of an open relationship as one that's open to change as change is needed. Whatever that looks like. It might look like multiple partners. It might look like a break. It might look like no sex for a month. It might look like no, sex every day. Whatever it is, like, this is my new need. I don't think it's about me. I think it's a genuine one. And I want to see how you can help me meet my need, whatever it is. Are you down to ride with me through this? So I like to think of open that way. But speaking of this relationship, let's talk about this open relationship. Well, seemingly open, right? So the way the story is painted is that there was a break in their relationship. And during that break, Jada had a relationship with August. Why might people say that's wrong? Why might people say that's right?
I think these ideals of right and wrong too are also shaped by society. So we like to fit into boxes. And while that doesn't work for me, I'd say I'm definitely more of the conventional type. I ain't sharing my wife with nobody. And that's also why I don't believe in breaks, because a break means I took a break from you, and therefore in that break you weren't not subjected to the rules, because that more so sounds like some type of controlling dynamic, but you now no longer have to subscribe to our rules, so to speak. So I'm personally ain't a risk taker in that way. But I think right or wrong is subjective, right? And I think it's, as a people, and I don't just mean Black people, I mean folks living in America, I think when we think everybody's business is our business, but we also project our own ideas on the people, and we really like to subscribe to these societal norms. So I think that's going to influence whether you see this situation is right or if you see this situation is wrong. Me personally, I'm kind of a to each his own type of person. If it works for you, cool. Just be willing to accept all of the risks that come with it, and I can tackle it from any angle, no judgment, no whatever. But I think there is no right or wrong when it comes to relationships. I think it goes back to what you said, what works for you and your person, and you two being secure enough in whatever that decision is to not really care what the outside world thinks or is saying about it.
I'm curious, Tris, just because I think that there are it's more than just you that doesn't want to share their wife. Can you tell me about what you think, what would sharing your wife mean? Not your wife personally, but what issue might a husband have with sharing his wife?
I mean, I think in general, we don't like to use these words, but I think everyone in a relationship, there's a certain sense of possessiveness. Otherwise, you wouldn't agree to any exclusivity, or you wouldn't agree to like these certain dynamics. So, not possessive in the sense of like I own you, but naturally, I think as humans, we all have like a little jealous side in us. And I think if, depending on me, and I think of my own beliefs, wanting to build with one person, it also wasn't me wanting to build and me now projecting my ideas of what that looks like onto you. It was a two-way street in the conversation that's had. And it was, we both view relationships this way, in this monogamous way. So I think for me, sharing would be entertaining. I like to think everyone has a gut. Everyone knows what wouldn't sit well with them. And I'd also like to believe that I've married someone who we have similar morals or values in that way, and similar beliefs. So for me, sharing would mean that you're entertaining someone or something on a level that, one, you wouldn't be okay with if it was on the other side. Two, you don't really feel fully okay with, so to speak. And then three, you ultimately like aren't really taking me into consideration in whatever this is. And I'm not saying this was the case with them because it sounds like it was different. A break, but it's hard to answer because I think that's a little bit different for everybody. But I think if I went off some examples, people probably might say sharing their wife was, again, the traditional sense of open, where like they can go on dates, they can entertain certain conversations. Now they're being intimate with people. And I don't even mean sexually intimate, because I think there are also emotional affairs. Like, in general, this piece where you aren't fully committed to this dynamic, but are dibbling and dabbling in others. And again, to each his own. I just didn't sign up for that life.
Right.
But I respect those who did.
You bring up a lot of good points. I mean, things that I want to address. Specifically on the idea of not wanting to share someone, and really kind of like connecting with what that means for you, in the sense that, like, what does that say about us? You know, does that say like we're not performing, or we're not meeting the needs of this person? Because most people that come into a relationship with the traditional sense or idea of what socially we've learned or been socialized to learn as far as what relationships are, is like, how are we not showing up? And that peeks into our own insecurities and our own self-worth and value. And so it may not so much be about that the person that we're with and their journey and whatever it is that they're going through, but it says something about us, you know, that they need someone outside of this relationship to fulfill something.
That must mean I'm not enough.
That must mean I'm not enough. And so it's like, I think a lot of people don't address that. I think they more so just look at, no, this is how it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. This is what we got into. I'm avoiding that feeling of like, what am I not doing right? Why am I not enough in these relationships?
I see it as very brave for those who involve themselves in unconventional relationships, because you are choosing to challenge everything you've been taught, right? Not to say that people who commit to one partner aren't brave. That's not what I'm saying. But I think there's an alternative form of brave too. And it looks like that. It's saying, can I love you knowing that you might not only just love me? And can I love you without knowing that this will last forever? And what some learn is this form of love allows for a bigger giving. We almost are able to give in a different way because we know it won't be there forever. And people really show up. So I think that there's positives in all the choices we make, and that is one beautiful one that you get to challenge. Like, what is love without attaching? How do I show up if I can't hold and keep? And I think that the truth is all things are subject to change. So it can be a practice and an experiment, if you would like to run it, to see like, yeah, what is that like for me? How do I show up when I can't attach?
I think my thing is, when I think about people experimenting or being open to different things when it comes to relationships, we'll look at it as from like an alternative relationship versus non-traditional, unconventional, because that kind of gives this idea that there's only this, right? That like this is the main way, and that whatever you do is just kind of like some different thing, right? Exactly. My thing with that is that really understanding yourself and knowing why you're doing what you are doing. Like, I know when we do a lot of work, we talk to clients that have like experienced a lot of trauma, have been in a lot of difficult relationships, where they've felt a certain way, and sometimes it feels like I have to do this. I have to do this in order for me to keep or hold on to a person. I have to allow them to be this person. But there's people like Tristan out here, you know what I'm saying, who are interested in being in a relationship just with you and not having that. But if you have an experience of this idea that a lot of people have, that, oh, all men are going to cheat, you know what I mean? All men are going to somehow be outside of their marriage at some point. It's like, that gives us this feeling like we have to accept something, and that's not really what we feel inside. Now, if you're a person who's just like, I understand the dynamics of love and relationships, and I feel like at some point people grow apart, and I just want to make sure that I still have this part of my relationship, and I'm cool with my partner doing whatever they need to do to fulfill that need when that comes up, then fine. But it's like, if you're entering that reluctantly just to have a piece of something, but you're not really cool,
like over compromising, we'll call it,
right? Because I've seen relationships where it's like one person is the person who wants to go out and do whatever, and then the other person is like, I'm not that person. I don't want to do that,
but I don't want to get left,
right? And it's like just kind of knowing like you're entering in this relationship where you've processed all of the things, because there's also people who use that as avoidance to really get deep or close to someone because the vulnerability is too much.
That's true.
Also, so.
And I think something worth touching on is the point that Soko, well, not the point, but the statement she made just in general, like this idea that I'm not with this person forever. And I think for me personally, how I approach my marriage is, of course, I have every belief, and I know without a shadow of a doubt that I'll be with Shamila forever. However, we don't live as if we'll be together forever. You know, like, I think when you automatically are like, I have this person forever, you start to take them for granted versus really focusing on what does it even take to maintain a forever with someone, whatever that forever may look like in that work. So I think it's twofold, right? Like, I think the bravery exists on one end and being willing to say, fuck the system, fuck the rules, I'm going to do this. And then I think there's a lot of bravery on the other side also, where you're able to say, I'm going to challenge all of this, what is it? Not societal newness, but I'm going to challenge temptation. I'm going to challenge this. I'm going to challenge this. And I'm really going to push myself to be committed to this person. Because just when you marry someone or you choose to commit to one person doesn't mean that you're not attracted to other people. It doesn't mean that you won't run into sketchy situations, etc. So I think, like we said, it's bravery on both sides. One where you're willing to say fuck the rules, and one where you're brave enough to tackle something that some kind of described as being like, that's not even humanly natural to be monogamous, etc. So I think it's kind of like just looking at it from both angles. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, I think it goes back to that question of like, how does this serve me? But I also think in knowing that something may not be forever, but trying to maintain it forever, I think that's where it also allows for these unconventional rules. You know, it's almost to say, I do want to be with you for a long time. I see that maybe what we started as is not working. What else can we do? And I think that question will lead different people to different end results. And who's to say?
Let me bring up the question, just related to that, is that Will said, like, there's nothing that Jada can do to ever
make
this end. Like, they've decided that no matter what, they're life partners and there's no deal breakers. How do you feel about that in a relationship where that gives somebody the license, not to say that they're going to take it, but gives somebody the license to do whatever they really want to do at the expense of possibly how you feel or your feelings? And maybe it's not, I don't know that that's an intentional thing, like I'm going to go out and I'm going to hurt this person because I know they're going to never leave me. But putting that out on the table is like, is this like, are Will and Jada just so progressive and enlightened? Or is this some level of false sense of security? Like, no matter what, I'm always going to have this person just in case.
And I guess I hadn't even heard that, so I don't even have deep thoughts. To know me is to know. And my wife will tell you, I don't give a fuck about gossip. So I'm not well connected to either side of the arguments. But I literally, when you started to say that, I was like, and that's them today. We're acknowledging that in life, people change and are ever evolving. So today that commitment works. Tomorrow it may not. And who knows? So I think it's another twofold situation, and it probably seems like I'm playing neutral, but I really think that it just depends, because again, today that works. We're life partners, nothing unstoppable. That's also you assuming you know exactly how extreme this person's willing to go. And that's you in agreeing to being like, we're life partners. There's nothing that could separate us. That's rooted in me also feeling like I know you to a certain extent.
That's exactly what I want to say. And I'm also like, that's what everyone says in their marriage vows. And why don't we question it then? Everyone says that when they sign up for a relationship. Like, till death do us part, whatever may come. But yes, Tristan, I echo that sentiment. I think that through the years, it's been established that they are so much of a similar mindset that I sign up for you because I know you won't fuck me over like that. I know you might do some things that make me upset, but like never like that hard.
Right.
Is how I see it. I think what's really important in any and every relationship is honesty. That you can come to your partner with how you feel and what desires you may have, and that they may not internalize that to mean something about them. I think that's an issue. And I'll speak to, I am heterosexual, so that's like kind of my level of expertise, right? Where I am is I see a lot of men who love their woman and want to be faithful, but step out. And I don't always think that means that something's missing in the relationship. And I know that women, we've been built up to think that a man should want us and only us. And if he doesn't, then I must be faltering or he must be lacking something. And I think that it could be that you're whole, female, woman, you're whole, everything's fine. And he wanted something else. And so like, if I don't attach your loyalty to my self-worth, then your disloyalty or unfaithfulness means nothing about my self-worth. Therefore, I make the space for you to come to me with whatever it is that's on your heart and your mind. Like, that's true intimacy. Tell me how you feel, what battles you're battling, so I can like understand you and not make it about me. I think that we can make a more open space so that there are less transgressions, so that we don't internalize them.
And I think in hearing that, I guess that is giving me but literally repeat the last thing you said.
Don't remember.
Oh, I think it was something about like okay, I got it. With people stepping out and creating this space for people to come back to, I think I challenge that because I'm personally a believer that we just don't fall into shit. And I think that if we are operating within that lens of true intimacy, then you would have come to me when you first started to feel like maybe something else was entertaining you, maybe something else was interesting you, maybe you were struggling with something, or whatever the case may be. I think it's almost kind of a cop-out to come back to the person on the back end, right? And be like, oh, well, now let me tell you about these things. And I could be totally misunderstanding the point.
Let me clarify.
But you know, where it's like a person comes to, so I guess then in acknowledging that I'm misunderstanding that point, just generalizing this for people for the folks listening, you also want to make sure you're having these intimate and open conversations on the front end, and that I'm a big believer in being a man of my word. And I think that is not just about being a man, but in general, people should be people of their word. So whatever we agree to, when you find yourself moving in a way that doesn't align with that agreement, I'd like to think that your integrity would lead you to come and discuss that, and that we can have those tougher conversations versus it being kind of a back end thing where this just happened. I always say, and again, this is super naive, but I've always been like, you gonna cheat? You pretty much, you didn't just like bump into somebody one day. Like I just have a hard time believing that you just bumped into this person and fucked them all on the spot. And if so, that just probably speaks to something else. I don't know. But usually either a conversation was built, you already felt yourself doing whatever in a way that was allowing for you to drift or whatever. And I think in those are all of those opportunities to come forward, lay it on the line, talk to me about it. And if we agree we can make it work, cool. But also, if not, why not give that person an out and say, hey, so I know this is what we agreed to. I find myself going another way. I wanted you to know so you can excuse yourself from this situation before pretty much I shit on you or now I'm in this position where I've broken something we agreed to. Because I think for me, more so than anything, whatever the situation, whether it's about, intimacy, sex and that, or if it's just breaking your word in general, trust is just super important to me. So for me, I'd rather you leave than to break my trust. And again, that just doesn't speak to cheating or stepping out, but in any way, shape, form, or fashion, I can't feel safe and vulnerable in places where I can't believe the words that come out of your mouth, or I can't believe that you'll honor our agreement.
Yeah. I feel like the word honesty too is like, there's genuine honesty and there's this honesty as I'm looking for the word. It's like it's being used in a way that's not the way it's intended.
What do you mean?
Like I'm saying, like in dating, I've heard people say like, well, I was honest with you. Like I told you this is what I was about. And so but then also there's no consideration as to, the person that you're with and how they feel about certain things, and that your honesty is a cop out for like, I don't have to feel guilty when I go out and do A, B, and C, instead of being real with like having a real understanding of the person that you're with. Like I think maybe with Will and Jada, there's a deep understanding among the two of them as to who they are and what they can handle, what they can deal with, and they've figured it out in that way. But I feel like in a lot of situations, especially with dating, I've heard that before, like this idea of like, well, I was honest with you. I told you I wasn't about this, that, and the third. I wasn't about being in a deep relationship or getting into this relationship, but you behave in a way that a person wants to be in a relationship, like you do relationship things.
So you're saying like watch what people do, not what they say?
I'm saying that we tend to like connect with people's behaviors. That's like the rule of thumb. Like somebody could tell you anything, but their behaviors or their actions is what says what they're really about. But what about the opposite end of the people who are being honest, saying what they don't want, but also are behaving in a relationship way? And then that creates a dynamic where somebody's connecting with you on a deeper level based on your actions. And then it's like the honesty becomes a way for them to not feel guilty, knowing that this person is kind of like moving deeper and deeper into a relationship with you because you are portraying it as such action wise. What do you think about that?
I think that, so if I'm in a relationship, or thinking I am, with someone who tells me that they're not for real, but they act for real, that's them giving me choice. I actually respect that. Okay. And so as a developed human, I feel like I have a responsibility to listen to what they say and watch what they do, and to ask questions, to check in as I invest and am fearful that maybe I'm investing more than the other, that I ask. And if they're acting right but saying wrong, I have questions, and I'm going to pull back a little bit because this shit don't feel right.
Yeah.
I'm over here. Like both of y'all are changing my perspectives on this. Shamila and I, that's my wife. We talk about this like often, just in general, like just different homeboys, homegirls we got, family members, just different situations as they come up. I feel like y'all teaching me balance right now. Like I hadn't thought about your point about actions speak louder than words, and how that is something we're kind of taught to live by in other situations. But in relationships, you're right, it does become a cop-out where you're like, well, I told you, but you're like, in every other way, you're like, action speaks louder than words. And then I hear what you're saying with balance. I've always been on the opposite end of that spectrum where it was like, yo, if I told you anything else, like, listen to what I told you. Like, what if I just like going to these biomass restaurants? What if I just like doing whatever these relationship things are? One, who said that they were relationship things? And two, what if they just align with who I am? Like, I like to go to fancy places. I like to be chivalrous. I like to call and check in on people. What if I just like to do these things, but if I'm telling you your end result and mine doesn't match, I've always lived in a row where like, damn, it's on you. Like, they said no. So really whatever they did, it was kind of on you to be monitoring how hard you was falling or not falling, and for you to be checking back in and be like, hey, I know you said this, but this and that and that. But now in this moment, I'm like, I think maybe it is room for both, where you can hold people accountable to their actions, but you gotta also hold on to what somebody told you, you know, like.
This speaks to socialization. This speaks to like how all of us are programmed to think a certain way based on what our family, our parents, the first place where we learn things, what we know,
what have been oppressed into,
right? Exactly what we've been exposed to, and that's all we know, and that's okay, because we can't know anything different unless we have experiences and choose to unlearn these ways of thinking. That's why I say the whole honesty issue is like, I've seen it used in a way that's manipulative or feels manipulative. Maybe it's not, but it feels manipulative in that it's like, I'm telling you what it is, but I'm giving you a different energy that is very confusing to the mind and body if you're trying to, you know. And so you know, individually, you have to be the person to make a decision and disconnect from that if it's not what you want. I know for me personally, I've been in situations like that where it's like, you know, a person likes you a certain way. Oh, okay. No, likes you a certain way, and that you like them, but not that way. And you can engage with them, but you know that all that engagement is going to encourage them to feel a certain way, or they feel like, if I just have that time with that person, they're going to come around. I can't
use for like evil.
Yeah. Like I can't consciously engage in that because I know that I am feeding into something that I don't want. And like me personally, this is my morally, I cannot do that. But some people are just like, I'm going to,
yeah,
you know,
I would insert that there is an option that the person who is showing up strong and telling you they don't really want anything serious might be a person who's able to love without attaching. Maybe a person who just shows up fully because that's how they operate. Yeah. But they also know that they don't want to commit.
Right.
I was going to say, I think a big part of it, and I think it speaks to everything we're saying. And if I had something to offer, it would be, I actually saw it more eloquently put on Instagram, but it speaks to absolutely what I know what we bring into our work and encouraging people to, and inviting people into the idea that trust and connection is built in vulnerability. I think this meme that I saw that really stood out to me, it pretty much said that learning your partner's vulnerabilities is is as important as knowing your own vulnerabilities. And it's not to be used to give them an out or to weaponize, but ultimately in knowing these vulnerabilities, you can use them to be compassionate, meet them where they at, set boundaries, etc. And I think that goes kind of to what we're all saying is, I think at the end of the day, on the human level, take intimacy, love aside, on the human level, we should be able to empathize and connect with someone's vulnerability. And if I know this is a weak spot for you, even if I ain't feeling you as my girl, just as another human soul on this earth, I should be able to like show up and like meet you there and be like, yo, I know this is important to you. Let me have this conversation, or let me address this, or let me take into consideration while I might be saying, I don't want no relationship. It seems like you might be falling for one, or you might be. So just that idea that we can also carry one another. I think there's balance in that. No, is it our responsibility? You know, once you said it, you can argue it's not my responsibility to keep checking in. I told you what it was. But also, I think on that human level, we can empathize as we learn more about you and we learn about your insecurities and things you may struggle with. And if nothing else, I like to think if I'm laying down with you, I could at least give a fuck to be like, yo, I know X, Y, and Z may not sit well with you. I at least want to create a space for you to talk about it, or a space for us to revisit this.
And you can only really do that for someone else after you can do it for yourself, which is why therapy is great, because it gets you to dig deep into yourself and address and accept your shadows, your light, your beauty, your flaws, all of that. Because when you can see that I come with flaws and I'm still worthy and I still love myself, then when someone else presents themselves with theirs, you're like, and I still fuck with you.
You can throw one of them gems in there because
that counts, right?
That definitely counted. I'm curious to know what the audience thinks about this topic. Like when you heard Will and Jada's Red Table Talk, did that change your perspective on relationships? Did that make you think differently about what is considered to be a healthy relationship? I saw all kinds of different responses to that via social media. I'm just wondering if that made somebody rethink like their experience in relationships, or maybe you just like, no, fuck that.
Yeah,
this is not cool. I'm not down with that. I'm curious to know how people are experiencing their relationships.
I'll tell you what I love to see on the Jill Will and Jada Red Table Talk was that there is an example of a woman who was with another man, and one of the most powerful Black men in the world, Will Smith, was like, okay, and I still love you, because there's definitely a double standard in relationships where men can venture out, but if a woman does, it's over. So it's very beautiful to see them breaking that gender norm, that stereotype. I'm with that.
I'm like, is that a whole nother topic?
It might
I
be
got
rough.
stuff to say about that.
Okay.
So hit us with your feedback on IG. Hit us in the DMs. Hill and Chill AF. And before we hop off of this topic, I think it's worth acknowledging too, specifically since this shit is for our folks. I also just want to say, if you just think historically about Black families, if you think historically what white supremacy has done to Black families, how white supremacy has influenced what relationships have looked like for Black people, I also want to just tell people, be patient with yourself, be compassionate, because that shit's complex. And I know for sure it's hella intergenerational trauma, intergenerational ideas, a whole bunch of shit that's being passed down that's shaped by racism in this country. So whether it was growing up in X, Y, and Z type of household, 2-parent, 1-parent, whether it was a parent who might be on drugs, whether it was, I think there are so many moving pieces that have come into play too, that as a people, we also have a million different examples of what love should look like and what love looks like, or if our examples is based on the lack thereof. If we never saw our parent in a healthy relationship, then are we chasing what they got? Are we chasing to be that exact opposite? I think in general, it's also worth exploring just historically how relationships have shown up in Black culture.
And that we think, just generally speaking, more creatively about all the avenues of life that we pursue, right? Profession, romantic relationships, friendships, the music we listen to. Like, everyone has their own thing, and don't follow one path, create your own, the one that works for you.
So this is a great conversation. And based on what we've talked about relationships today, what are some things that we could share with our audience on ways to explore more and identify more who they are in relation to their relationship, and how that can strengthen their understanding of how they want to be in relationships, or what they're open to?
Well, Robin Dial, I'm glad you asked, because I happen to be a fan and advocate for Chani Nicholas, who is an astrologer who's woke as fuck. And she has a relationship workshop, and there's some journaling questions that are beautiful. So I'm going to read them to you all. The first is, these are things to explore for yourself. So these answers are just for you. What are your current beliefs about or experiences of friendship, love, intimacy, sex, and partnership? What were you taught about being in partnership from your caregivers? What was the relationship dynamic like that made the biggest impression on you? What role models did you have for partnerships? Do you have current role models of folks that do relationships in a way that feels powerful, loving, and energetically aligned? If not, can you imagine one, write a story about one, or draw the image of one? What gender norms were you taught as a child, young person, and adult? How does your individual gender expression fit or not fit in those norms? What kind of feedback do you get from your communities about how you cultivate appreciation and love for your unique way of expressing yourself, no matter the reaction from the outside world?
I would love for people to share with us if they feel comfortable. Share with us maybe some insight that they got from those prompts, those questions. And it's something that we can maybe talk about.
Yeah. Definitely.
I always ask my clients who are having relationship issues, and primarily those who have infidelity concerns, I ask them, if it didn't matter what anyone thought, your lover included, what would you want a relationship to look like? How many lovers would you have? What would they be like? How would you operate? How would you manage it? And then they kind of get like scared, like, oh, I can't. Yes, you can. Tell me what you think.
And what would you accept? Because most of the time, you know, when people are cheated on, it's about humiliation. And not wanting to feel that humiliation of everyone else knowing and what they think versus what we actually feel.
Right.
Like, because I've definitely heard the, you know, outside looking in, I would never let anybody cheat on me. I will walk away. I will be this. I was that person. And then when it happened, I was like, oh, not that easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tons of dope ass conversations. We can go on and on and on about this for hours and days. But yeah, like Rob said, if you guys feel comfortable sharing your feedback and your answers to some of these questions, again, hit us in our DMs, Heal and Chill AF on IG. Moving into the next segment of our show, as Black therapists trying to make this happen, we thought it would be dope to use this platform that we're trying to develop for ourselves to shout out other dope therapists, period. Not just Black, but dope therapists across the board who are making it happen. So today we're going to shout out Josie Rosario, NYC on IG.
She be dropping
gems. And it's fitting because she brands herself as a millennial couples therapist, which I think speaks exactly to this. So check her out, see what she has to offer. And if we had to leave you guys with anything, like the one golden rule to make sure like you prevent heartbreak and you had a perfect relationship, it would be that it ain't no golden rule. Fuck all that shit and arrest the motherfuckers who killed Breonna Taylor. We out.
Hey, we out.
This has been an Inclusive Media Podcast Studios production.